Picaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect. Garland run of the lane, lob to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs Media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo TV. Watch over 100 channels of live sports and TV for half the cost of cable. There's no contract and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com. We are just one day away from Game 3 between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the New York Knicks as the Cavs try to regain home court. Very excited to be back in the saddle podcasting once again. Felt weird going YouTube only for these last couple days, but I'm excited to lock in, strap in, and be podcasting for the rest of the series. And joining me today to discuss Game 3 is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, Justin. It's hard being back home, just sitting around, going to work, after the fun of a blowout win at home, a much needed blowout win at home, where the Cavaliers, I think, answered a lot of questions that were posed, and I think that's probably the right place to start talking about this podcast. Again, it's just that if they get punched, if they get punched in the mouth in Game 1 and kind of just eke their way to a Game 2 win, I just think the entire conversation around this series is very, very different. Yeah, and the fact that the Cavs have made the Knicks offense look so bad and seem to figure out some great stuff on the offensive end. Well, I feel like even though they've lost home court advantage, I still feel like they kind of have control of the series.
Right, because the reality is, in a 7-game series, it's all about adjustments. It's all about finding your groove. And really, I think historically, when you look at the playoffs, it's the first couple games that you start to see some of those counters. And after that point, it just becomes about execution. Everybody knows what everybody else is going to run. And through 2 games in this playoff series, we've seen the Cavs adjust to what the New York Knicks are doing defensively. I don't think we've seen that yet from the Knicks offense. And I think there's reason to believe that the Knicks are going to look better at home. I would expect Emmanuel Quickley, who's now coming off a 6th Man of the Year snub, to look a lot better. Obviously, you expect guys like Quentin Grimes and other role players to play better at home. But overall, I feel like the Cavs have kind of won the adjustment game to this point, because after that first half, I thought the Cavs outplayed the Knicks in the second half of Game 1. And it really came down to execution. You have that Josh Hart shot that went in, but outside of that, the Cavs still made some mistakes. They left a lot on the table. In Game 2, they stopped leaving that on the table. And we're now 2 games into the series. The Cavs seem to have found something that works on the offensive end of the court. And the Knicks are still trying to find ways to get that going. The leading 2 scorers in this playoff series right now are Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. If that continues for the length of the series, the Cavs are probably going to win this one.
Yeah, and again, you just got to remember this, that the outcome was not even nearly as close as the final score. I mean, Cavs were up 29 with 6 minutes left in the game. I thought that New York came out. I thought they played really good ball. I rewatched the game this morning. I pulled a Justin Rowan and actually rewatched, did my homework. And, it just felt like, and, I was kind of on the lookout for a few things. I was on the lookout for a rough New York whistle because, if you can believe it, Knicks Twitter seems to think that the Cavs have whined their way into an uneven whistle, which I didn't really see, to be honest. I looked relatively closely. A couple ticky-tack calls on Hartenstein, but, they still took 10 more free throws than the Cavs. So, ultimately, I don't think that was one of those major disparities. Really, it was a game where Darius, I just think, all those times he turned down wide open threes, he took them. And again, it's not like the Cavs offense was any great shakes here. I mean, they had 107. Obviously, would have scored more if they didn't shut it down with about 4 minutes left to go and put in a lot of reserves. But all that to say, I just feel like the Cavs answered. They did so much cool stuff defensively, Justin. Rewatching the game, it really confirmed what my first in arena eye test taught me. The way they trapped, it's not like they just trapped at the point of attack. They doubled late. They doubled mid drive. They did all the kinds of things that I don't think they did it in game one, even though they had a nice defensive effort in game one, Justin. I feel like in game one, Brunson and Randall got to get to their spots, and it's still a make or miss game because those guys are their spots are still like tough shots spots.
Yeah.
But like
and they're tough shot makers.
yes, but I think they got to those spots in rhythm. I feel like Brunson and Randall never knew when the help was coming in this game, and Randall especially is just not the playmaker to overcome that.
Yeah, I feel like the key to the Cavs defense in game two, and really the key to the defense moving forward, is to kind of blow up the Knicks' actions and keep them playing one-on-one. Because Julius Randle, a lot of like the third quarter offense was devolved into him just trying to attack Evan Mobley one-on-one. And I think that's why you saw the assist to turnover ratio he had. I think that's why you saw the efficiency that he had. And what they did to Jalen Brunson, I thought was exceptional on the defensive end. Like the hard shows every time that there's a ball screen, just, showing him different looks defensively, trying to disrupt what he's doing offensively, because Brunson's going to be able to beat some of that pressure. But if he's making a lob pass rather than a direct pass or a bounce pass, skip pass to the corner, that's going to give the Cavs defense enough time to rotate over and stay home with their guys. And if they're doing that and you're getting a switch out of that result, and the Knicks offensive players feel like those are advantageous one-on-one matchups, I'm going to live with the Knicks going one-on-one for the remainder of this series, because I think it's just going to be too hard for them to generate open three-point looks, which we know sometimes the Cavs are going to give up those open looks in the corner. But if they're playing one-on-one basketball and those looks are now step-back jumpers and guys trying to get into their own offense rather than looking to pass and play the team offense, I don't think the Knicks are going to be able to generate enough offense. Now, doing that's easier said than done. Jalen Brunson is a big-time playoff performer. Julius Randle is an all-NBA player. But I do think in terms of what the Cavs are going to try to do in this series, that is one of those key points of emphasis.
Absolutely. And we saw it in game two. And this is the spot where you kind of expect it to be different at MSG, where, they were just kind of cool with RJ Barrett ISOing Darius Garland. In terms of adjustments I expect them to make on the defensive end of the ball, I do wonder if they're just gonna say, we're gonna stop trying to hide Brunson so much. I really feel like just like the Cavaliers, I think in the past have broken their defense kind of needlessly trying to hide Darius.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they kind of broke their defense trying to hide Brunson. Like Karras just had a parade of wide open threes and catches with advantage, with them kind of trying to hedge Brunson out and dodging. And the one thing that I do think the Knicks have done amazingly in this series is when their defensive shell stays intact, I think the Cavs have had a really hard time scoring because Mitchell Robinson is doing the Lord's work protecting the rim. So I feel like they're kind of giving it some advantage when they kind of don't need to. It's not like Brunson is like one of the worst defenders in the league. He's not amazing. But
he's pretty rough. So let me just, for the sake of this conversation and for the sake of clarification.
By the way, your face that entire segment was like, I disagree. No, I disagree.
It wasn't necessarily disagree. I just want to know what form that takes in your mind. Like, where are you putting Jalen Brunson if you're not hiding him? Like, are you putting him on Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell?
You just keep him on his hiding spot. But if they're try not to give up switches. Don't give up soft switches. But if they force you in, don't kill yourself trying to. Like, I feel like a switch where the Cavs end up burning an extra 7 seconds on the shot clock is probably the juice is worth the squeeze for them, especially with Karras on the floor. I feel a little differently with Isaac or Danny or Jetty in those minutes, because I don't think they're as likely to attack. But ultimately, like I just think they bent themselves out of shape, and those hedge and recovers, those give guys like Darius Garland room to pull, or to get into the teeth of the defense. And him on the ball, like they didn't trap him much in this game either, which I thought was interesting because it worked so well in the first half of game one. And I think part of that might have been that reason is they felt like they had to recover out to these shooters, as opposed to just hard trapping to get the ball out of his hands.
Yeah, well, I think that's something, even if you go back and look at game one, the Knicks don't trap when Karis LeVert or Jetty Osman are on the court. That was basically exclusively Isaac Okoro's out there, so we're going to send that person to help. We're going to be a little more aggressive defensively, and that's something that I assume, and we'll get into this in a moment, if Okoro's playing, the Cavs have to be ready for that. And honestly, those first 3 minutes that Okoro played, I felt like Cavs, they left stuff on the table that was there. Like Garland had a couple bad passes. Like what's lost in his fantastic performance was those first couple minutes. I remember it was a timeout. I was checking Twitter and people were killing him because he threw the one pass a little too low on Okoro cutting to the basket. There were easy baskets that lineup could have had. The Cavs are going to need to be ready that when Okoro is out there, they're likely going to be bringing a little bit of extra help. But what you're saying makes sense with Jalen Brunson defensively. When the reason I was making those faces and I wasn't sure what you were talking about is when we talk about unnecessarily hiding Darius Garland, it's, hey, he can D up. We can put him even on Jalen Brunson in these spots. So I thought you were saying put Jalen Brunson on Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland.
No. Just don't bend yourself out of shape, showing, recovering, doing all this crazy stuff to avoid getting that switch. When I just feel like, especially this Cavs team, like, shout out to Steve Jones, but they don't always play with the best pace. They don't always get into their offense fast, and anything that slows them down even further, which a switch does. A switch can short circuit your offense. I think it's worth doing. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about Jalen Brunson is, I feel like he left some meat on the table in that game. Rewatching, when he attacked the hard hedge, he got good looks. In terms of, we know what our impulse is, right? On these sorts of things, which is to say, everything the Cavs did was good is gonna stay. Everything bad the Knicks did is gonna stay. Nothing's gonna get better for them,
And the things we did bad, we can shore up,
of course,
and fix that.
But I feel like Brunson watching the tape is gonna be like, oh man, every time I really attacked, I turned the corner. He turned the corner on Jetty. Got a clean look for three for I think it was Toppin in the corner. Drew a blocking foul on Jared Allen. That is one thing, by the way, we have not seen in this series yet is foul trouble for either Evan or Jarrett. I think they've got like 3 or 4 fouls combined through 2 games. And those kind of attacks, I think, are the way that you're gonna destabilize and unset this Cavs defense in a way that doesn't just funnel the ball to your poor playmakers, which is where I think the Cavs won the game on that. They just said, hey, we don't really think you're gonna we think RJ Barrett's gonna slow and reset the offense when he gets the ball with advantage. We think Mitchell Robinson at the free throw line is comedy. And I feel like those are the ways that Brunson can attack what the Cavs are doing and kind of maintain that advantage. I think he kind of too easily went into let me just get rid of the ball, they're hedging mode, as opposed to just really attacking. So that's one thing I think we're going to see.
I agree with that assessment. I think you still want to kind of have those hard shows and to kind of blitz and trap and throw things at him, just because.
I'm not changing the strategy. I just think he'll attack it better than 5 of 17.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think the purpose behind that, though, is to kind of rush someone's decision making, right? Force them to give up the ball unnecessarily, or if he does beat that defensive action, then maybe he's rushing the jumper a little bit, and that makes it a little harder, because the best Jalen Brunson defense is disrupting his rhythm. The times that they managed let him stay in his rhythm and just contest the shot late, that's how he goes for 48 points at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, right? Like when he's in a rhythm, it's very hard to disrupt him. Even though he is a smaller guard, he's just so good with his
plays at
footwork.
his own pace.
He is one of the most crafty guards, and honestly, I really do enjoy watching him play. And I hope that outside of his future games against the Cavs, he has nothing but success. But
can I say this? I thought I'd be more annoyed at like grift ball. I don't really think he's done that much of it. Like he's sold a few fouls here and there, but like
Yep.
you're gonna do that. You're a point guard in the NBA.
Yeah.
I don't think he's played.
Which I think in the outrage from game one, people were looking at Isaac's quote. I'm like, of course he brought that up, even though Brunson only had 4 free throws, because Isaac had 3 fouls in the game and 2 of them were on kind of ticky-tack grifting stuff. Like that's what he's thinking about, because he's thinking about his own individual role within the game. And honestly, we probably should transition to Isaac and what we expect from the starting lineup, because but before we get into what we expect from the Knicks and the adjustments that Thibodeau might end up making, the big question coming into this game is who the Cavs are going to end up starting at the small forward spot, given the fact that Isaac Okoro only played 3 minutes in that Game 2 win. We do have a little bit of news on that front as well. Cedi Osman is questionable with an ankle sprain, although I did see Chris Fedor tweet out that Cedi was moving around well after practice. That's one of those things where if there's any chance a guy's not going to play, they'll be listed as questionable. We saw Josh Hart go from doubtful to questionable, so I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that Cedi's going to be all right. But I got to ask you, Carter, what direction would you go if you're playing armchair coach here? Who would you end up starting for Game 3?
I'm starting Isaac again. I think that his 3 minutes, were really a byproduct of Danny Green giving you good minutes. Cedi Osman, really most of Cedi's minutes came in that initial stretch after Isaac got into foul trouble. And he played
the rest were all Karras and Danny.
Yeah, I mean, Karras played 40 minutes. There's not going to be a ton of Isaac minutes, no matter what, if Karras plays 40, because that leaves 15 or so at the 1 and 2 and 3 for the game in a competitive game. I think that was a byproduct of Karras, and I thought the Cavs were just rewatching that initial stretch. I thought the Cavs were actually getting good looks. Isaac did miss that initial layup, which counts. That counts that he missed it. But I don't think that the Cavs looked super bogged down, and I think Game 1 had much more to do with Darius on the offensive end being completely out of rhythm and struggling to and not being aggressive than it had to do with Isaac. And
Mobley not playing well as well.
Yeah, and again, to give credit to Mitchell Robinson, I think Nick's film school said that dudes are shooting 30% at the rim with Mitchell Robinson guarding them in this series. I think at least the 2 front court players. So I'd still start Isaac and see what I can get out of him. I did wonder if the fact that he didn't come in at the end was a little bit of a sign that maybe the knee is still bothering him a little bit, and JB's like, let's just rest. I'm not worrying about getting you in rhythm, but who knows? I don't think I would start Danny Green. I think I saw Jason Lloyd suggest that maybe it was on the radio. I don't remember where he did.
It was with Ken Carman.
Got it. I would not do that. I think you've seen so much success limiting this Knicks offense by guarding Brunson with either Cedi, Karras, or Isaac. I think Green only guarded Brunson on one possession. They'd rather have him guard Julius Randle to give you a sense of where they feel Danny's mobility is on defense right now. They'd rather just be savvy and try your best. But we're not. I don't really want Darius or Donnie on that assignment full time to start a game. So I feel like it's really a matter of, do you start Karras or do you start Isaac? Because Cedi's 3 has not been particularly good. Certainly wasn't in that last game. And I just would rather keep Karras off the bench. This team needs to go, when they sub someone out, they need to have someone with a little punch coming back in. So I think Karras is your starters are your core 4 with Karras. Or I'm sorry, that's who ends games. But your starters, I think I'd still go Isaac for now.
I think I'd go Isaac as well. Although I will say,
quick leash is fine, or quick pull.
That's certainly a possibility. The thing that comes to mind is, and I saw some people say, well, does this mean Isaac's not going to be in the rotation? And I just don't think you can commit to a 7-man rotation where three of the 7 are Caris LeVert, who we've seen both extremes of what his game can be. Cedi Osman, another guy that's had ups and downs, and then Danny Green, who has not played a lot of minutes this season period and is still dealing with some mobility issues. You're going to need Isaac Okoro at some point in this series, and it's actually interesting looking at this series to this point. The Cavs starting five with Okoro has played 22 minutes. They actually still have a plus 13.3 net rating in those 22 minutes, which to me is surprising. The offense has been really bad, but the defense has been outstanding. And for me, like, if you can survive those minutes, or if you can win those minutes and you're keeping the Knicks out of the rhythm offensively, I think that's one of the most important things that you can have in this series, because when the Knicks aren't in their rhythm, we saw it in game 2. Julius Randle gets frustrated. And when they get frustrated, they play more one-on-one basketball.
And they hit each other in the face.
there's that as well. I do think that Isaac needs to play. The one thing I'll say, though, and this probably can lead into the adjustments we expect from Thibodeau, is I don't know if the Knicks are going to change their starting lineup, but I feel like the counter to what the Cavs were doing, having those wings out there, playing Danny Green, going a little smaller at times, I feel like the counter for Tom Thibodeau is he's going to put multiple ball handlers on the floor. I think we're going to see more Jalen Brunson with Emmanuel Quickley, with Quentin Grimes. And what they're going to try to do in those spots is get Danny Green in action. Whoever he's guarding, he's going to screen a ball handler. Whoever Jetty's guarding, screen a ball handler. Let's try to get more movement. Let's open things up. And if that's the case, I can see the case for having Caris LeVert start and Okoro coming in off the bench, because if that second unit lineup, when you only have one of the bigs and one of the guards out there, is, let's say, Donovan Mitchell, Caris LeVert, Jetty Osman, Isaac Okoro, or Caris LeVert, Danny Green, Isaac Okoro, and Evan Mobley or Jared Allen, all of a sudden it's a lot easier to have Isaac on the court, and it's a lot more important to have that point of attack defense, because you want Caris, you want Isaac to be those point of attack defenders that can switch, that can manage those situations. So I see the argument for both, but at this point, with it being a 1-1 series, and with my sense that the Cavs have really kind of controlled the last three halves for this series, I just don't know if I'd go dramatic shakeup, especially when you do have that option to go quick hook with Isaac Okoro.
Listen, I think you need your eighth man on the rotation to give you 10 minutes in a real competitive game. That's what you need. And I would venture to say that any Cavs role player who in those 10 minutes is better than like a -5 on the plus minus charts, fine by me, buddy, because I think we're going to win the other minutes. I as long as because we know the core four, when they share the floor, I think they're going to outscore the Knicks. At least, if they don't, they're not winning the game anyway. Doesn't matter whether Isaac gets 10 or 15 minutes at that point. So really, you're just looking for someone who in that eighth spot, and it's going to be different from game to game based on who's playing well. Like your point about the Cavs being the team, the Cavs that got punched in the mouth in game 1 and Cavs that ran the Knicks off the floor in game 2. They're both the real Cavs, and Caris LeVert that scores 24 and basically dominates the Knicks is the same Caris as the one who went 1 for 7 in game 1. So I think that's why you don't commit to pulling Isaac, and that's actually why I think more ammo for why you just keep him starting. Everyone's comfortable in these roles. Everyone's used to this. Like, unless your starting lineup is getting run off the floor, which you just demonstrably proved it is not, just hang. And I would hesitate to lay too much at Isaac's feet. Especially since he has done such a nice job on Brunson. So I completely agree with you, but I actually don't think there's a great case to start Caris, knowing that if Caris has got it, he's going to get plenty of minutes.
Yeah, I agree. And part of it might also be like Thibodeau might be expecting that, right? Like we're now into mind game where it's, he's probably expecting me to do this, but is he expecting me to expect him to do that? And you're seeing all the adjustments. Like Thibodeau, his reputation, and I always hate the caricatures of coaches, but you hear it in a lot of the analysis too, right? Is he is a between the games game plan adjustment type coach, right? So I I just think starting with your best foot forward, the lineup that you're probably going to have the most defensively, you're not going to let the Knicks get off to a hot start. And really, like the fact that they've won those 22 minutes and only 3 of those minutes came with aggressive Garland, really, like that to me is encouraging, because I do think so much of that game one was Mobley not playing great in the short roll, Darius not taking opportunities that were there. And I just feel they're better prepared for that. And obviously you're going to need to expect them to throw defensive pressure at Garland or at Mitchell if Okoro's out there. And Okoro's going to need to be ready to move off ball, and they're going to need to have that backline support in those passing lanes there. Garland or Mitchell are going to need to see that help before it comes. And there's ways to attack that, right? You are destabilizing the defense by them really selling out and abandoning Okoro, right? So I just think it's worthwhile to go to, just as you said, to balance the rotation and stick with what's comfortable. And I mean,
and if he goes 2 for 5 from 3 in a game, it's gonna feel like those will be so demoralizing for the Knicks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they will be. And also, like, the funny thing is, we are focused on winning this series. And if this was a lineup that I thought wasn't going to win its minutes for sure, I wouldn't be arguing for this. But this is a lineup that I think can win its minutes. It's won its minutes to this point. And I do think that there is once again a value for all your young guys trying to work it out together in a playoff environment. Like there are still developmental opportunities even when you're trying to win. And really, the Cavs' strong second half, the reason that they got home court is because this lineup has been so good. So obviously we don't know what the health of Isaac Okoro is, how much of a factor that played into it. I thought the first foul he picked up in game 2 was one he didn't need to take. It was a little frustrating situation. The second one was ticky-tack. And after that, the game flow just, as JB said, it's not a long-term decision, but it was working so well, it was hard to go away from it. But realistically, if this if this series goes the distance the way that we expect it to, you're going to need bodies. You're going to need your best point of attack defender. And I just don't want that to be a situation where you start someone because out of a knee-jerk reaction after a win, and all of a sudden you're calling on Okoro in the third quarter when he's cold, right? Like, stick with what's got you here. And again, I see the value in maybe Karras. Like, if I'm going devil's advocate, I can see doing that just because you expect the Knicks to go smaller when they're staggering. But to me, it's a Karras or Okoro decision, because those have been your best 2 lineups throughout the year. I have it in our notes here, but for the season, the Cavs' best lineup was still the core 4 with Caris LeVert. They were much worse defensively, they were much worse offensively than the Okoro starting lineup, which is weird, about 10 points worse. But they have a plus 15.1 net rating for the year. That's been a very, very good lineup, and I think some of that has got to do with what we talked about in the past, which is the Cavs really do stick with their core defense when Karras is in at the 3, and that core defense is really, really damn good.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what I talked about with the Knicks. Like, if both these teams just have such great size protecting the rim that, you know, ultimately that base defense is going to be reliable. And you know what else is reliable, Justin, is our video conference software. Support for this podcast and the following message come from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom. Single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects.
You botched it.
I know.
You were so close. When you said reliable, I was like, oh, there. He just gave me a window to do the ad read. I
just hung out with you and Trish too much, you know, over the last couple of days. Collaboration. It just snuck into. I'm just sneaking north of the border.
Yeah, and obviously you just saw how much fun we have with bits, and you're like, you know what? I got to do one here on the pod.
It's a very cute couple, guys. Just so you know, they're just the sweetest couple in the world. I want to ask you about the Knicks rotation. I don't think there's any world in which any of the 9 guys that have played for them in this series get cut out of the rotation. Grimes has not played well. Quickly has not played well. Barrett has not played well. Toppin's plus minus hasn't been good. He's maybe the only candidate to me, but like I think any tweaks they make to the rotation are kind of minute allotment, much more than like a player jumping in out of nowhere or a player being taken out of nowhere. Do you agree with that take?
I mostly agree with it. I can see, and I think you're correct in highlighting Obi as maybe the guy. If they're
Which
going,
stinks
like,
for him because I think he's actually played okay. I haven't hated his minutes.
And also, if the Knicks game plan is, okay, the Cavs are going a little bit smaller here with some of these second unit lineups, we're going to go smaller. Obi makes a lot of sense, right? Because he's another volume 3-point shooter. And I think what you'd want to do is test the Cavs, right? Is if they are blitzing it, if they're really kind of attacking our ball handlers, if Jalen's able to navigate that, he's going to be able to find Obi in the corner like he did on that play you mentioned earlier with Jetty Osmond showing hard in that spot. So I think Obi will still continue to play. I do wonder if RJ ends up losing some minutes. And again, I think you're correct that it'll come down to minute allotment more than falling out of the rotation. But I really can see them going to more Emmanuel Quickley alongside Jalen Brunson. And I thought that was actually something that Tibbs was showing his hand a little bit at the end of game 2, which was, hey, this game's out of hand. Let's at least get Quickley going. Let's try to get him more reps. Let's get him some shots here. Obviously, the Cavs weren't at maximum focus at that point, and some of it came in the last 7 seconds because he decided this is a great time to draw a foul. I'm still amazed that was called in that spot. But they tried to get him going, and I think that is going to be kind of one of their swing pieces where they're like, hey, we saw what happened when Garland went off in game 2 and opened things up for everybody else. If Emmanuel Quickley can start to draw some pressure from the Cavs defense, maybe that opens up other opportunities. Now, despite what our friends at Knicks Film School say, I don't think Emmanuel Quickley is on the level of Darius Garland or Evan Mobley. I think it'll look a little bit different. But I do expect that to be the adjustment, because if the Cavs are having so much success having Danny Green, Karis LeVert, and these guys out there getting ball handling on the court and trying to loosen up this offense and generate a little bit more flow, has to be the priority, because this is a Knicks team that has struggled getting assists all year. There's a lot of one-on-one isolation basketball, and right now they are playing into the Cavs defense hands by continuing to do that.
I talked about the tape I saw on what Brunson can fix. Quickley, man, all you got, if I'm Emmanuel Quickley, I got everything I need to play better. I mean, his pick and roll play has been just terrible in this series. He's just not using a screener at all. It's like he's playing a little spazzy on ball, and you wonder if going home will calm him down. The few times he did get to run pick and roll in this game, he was just attacking before Robinson or Hartenstein were set, and those are two great screen setters, and you could almost see them go like, "Wait, are you going now?" Like, I'm not here yet. And it really allowed guys just to stay connected to him. And obviously he is a capable ISO player, but I just don't think he's doing himself any favors with how he's playing. So that is a guy I expect to play better, just because I just think he's playing really not smart basketball for a dude who has shown better pedigree than that. But I do think I was right that this is a hard matchup for him. A fundamental team that isn't lunging out of control, that is messing with his floater. The much promised pull-up jumper that all our Knicks friends told us was there and was much more important than his floater these days. He hasn't looked comfortable going to it. He took a pull-up 3 that about dented the backboard in game 2. I think he's in a lot of ways, I feel like he's the key for them in game 3, because if he's just not going to be a factor in the series, I just don't see how the Knicks have enough juice.
Yeah, I don't love how confident you're sounding, because I'm a superstitious individual.
I just said I think he's going to play way better. What are you talking about?
But I just I don't know if it's a tone thing or what the deal is. It's just
I'm feeling
giving me
good that I
the
thought it was going to be a hard series, but I also think he can play better.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Do you think quickly, if you're power ranking the guys that you expect to step up, is Emmanuel quickly at the top of that list?
I do. I
Okay.
think I would put him there. Just because he seems to be a guy that, the MSG faithful have really wrapped their arms around. They really seem to love him, and I feel like that's kind of a mutually beneficial relationship. He's a kid, so he's going to play better at home.
Mhm.
I think he 2 games of tape is really valuable for a guy like that.
Yeah, two
If
two off days as well.
if the Knicks staff is doing their job, and Quickly is doing his job and figuring out what's going wrong, and ultimately, like, he kind of has the DNA, even though he does like the ISO just like the rest of them. He has more connector DNA in him than an RJ Barrett.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment, and I would say, look, power ranking them, Emmanuel Quickly is the one that concerns me the most. I do still have fear of Quentin Grimes just because he has that high release, and I feel like there's a 6 of 8 from 3 game from Quentin Grimes at the Garden at some point.
Quentin Grimes might be their Jared Allen in the sense that his offense is almost symptomatic of how everything else is going.
That's a very smart point. Yeah.
Like they are so out of sorts, and a big part of what made their offense top 5 is these ISOs, these burrowing ISOs and offensive rebounds led to scrambles. And that high quick release that Grimes has when he's not guarded is deadly. Or when he's kind of guarded, but the Cavs were just in their base all game. Like, they didn't have to scramble out to him that much. Like, he missed a couple threes, but I think it's way more important that he only took 2 threes than that he didn't make any.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like if the Knicks are able to do the stuff I've talked about, making the connective plays, being a little bit more decisive on the catch with advantage, Brunson breaking the defense a little bit more before he gives it up, stuff like that, I feel like that's why Grimes will play better. I just feel like Grimes is a product of his environment. And that's not like a dig on Grimes. It's actually a compliment that, he's kind of a perfect role player, but perfect role players can't help if your base offense isn't functioning.
Yeah, and God, yeah, I think you're on the money there, and I think that's why you want to continue to put as much pressure as you can on Jalen Brunson, just so that it makes it harder for him to make everyone else good, because they do have a lot of depth. Even though the depth hasn't shown up to this point in the series, these are very good basketball players. They are very helpful basketball players. And you mentioned him being the Cavs Jared Allen, or the Knicks Jared Allen. I do gotta say, it didn't come up when we were doing our short post-game pod, but we do gotta give Jared some credit. 3 steals, 3 blocks, and 3 assists, man. Like, he was pitching in absolutely every single way. And he continues to be underappreciated in this ecosystem of awesome players. I think Jared Allen's defense, again, his switchability, the way that he's able to play out on the perimeter and be part of that Cavs blitzing and trapping defense that made things so difficult. The fact that Allen can go out there as well, just like Mobley can, makes it so difficult, because when you get by him, when you finally get through all the arms that the Cavs have, you now have to go to Evan Mobley. And by the time you're trying to break down Evan Mobley, Jared Allen's rotated back into his spot. Like, the Cavs starting or like the core 4 has been phenomenal in this series once again. And they've been phenomenal as a unit, despite individually them still having the potential to be a whole lot better.
I don't think this is a good matchup for Jared Allen. I think I
agree.
Robinson is enormous. I think he's playing. I don't know. I think he's a way better defensive player than I thought he was.
Okay.
In terms of his IQ, I feel like he is. Steve Jones after Game 1 really threaded about how great the Knicks were at executing the defense they'd schemed up. I thought Robinson was just such a huge part of that. He hasn't lunged out.
He's a fantastic defender.
Has he chased a single block in this series? I don't feel like I've seen it.
No.
He's stayed ground bound. He has wiped out shots at the rim on switches. He has come over and helped at the right time and recovered onto the bigs when they get kickoff or passes kicked over to them. I think he's been awesome. So the fact that Jared is not having a loud series by any means, but I thought last game was a much better, like, hey, this isn't a perfect series for me, but on the defensive end, I can still be awesome.
In a lot of ways.
I can still be awesome, and I'll clean up a little bit. I'm gonna have a couple awkward offensive possessions when normally I get to be the best guy at the rim, but there's someone bigger than me here that is as athletic as me. But defensively, I think he is a big part of why Julius Randle had 6 turnovers. Some of his late help was just awesome, and his hands were good too. And yeah, I think he deserved a lot of credit, and feels like he's starting to settle in as well. Should we talk about Mobley, because Mobley had a horrible game? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say with Jared Allen is I feel like this is a card that JB hasn't had to play yet. And I don't know if we're going to get to it, but at some point, if Mobley struggles in the short roll like he did in game 1, I feel like you can make the change to having Mobley in the dunker spot and having Jared kind of play as the short roll playmaker. Like, that has been such an improved part of his game, and he's such a stronger screen setter. A lot of those traps in game 1 were Mobley not setting the best screens or leaving a little too early, and that second defender that came along with him coming up and trapping Garland, right? And you would have a Corals man come down and tag Mobley as he's trying to slip the screen, and the offense would get gummed up in that way. I do still feel like that is an adjustment the Cavs can make if they need to, but I would continue with this way because, again, it's what the Cavs have done all season, and I think those reps from a development standpoint are so important for Evan Mobley.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about Mobley. He had a terrible game 1, one of the worst offensive games of his young career. 4 of 13 for 8 points. Still isn't getting to the line. He only had 2 attempts in game 2, but went 6 of 11. Started the game very poorly again. I think he missed his first 3 shots. And then, went ahead and hit 6 of his next 8. What do you think? Do you think he's figuring some stuff out? Do you think he just happened to be reaping the rewards of a increasingly defeated Knicks team? What do you think?
I think he's starting to figure stuff out. And some of that, I would say maybe like that's 30% me being a homer-ass homer. It's wishful thinking at all times. A big part of that is what we've seen from Evan Mobley over the last 2 years, which is that guy is a supercomputer that continues to take in new information and get better and adjust and find his ways to get more comfortable. And that's one of the things that I find so exciting about Evan Mobley is I do feel like he's the type of guy that gets better as the playoff series progresses. You know that he's going to be studying in the film room. And I still feel like one of the most important things, obviously, is Darius Garland maintaining that assertiveness that he showed in game 2, because I think that opens everything else up. And maybe it doesn't come in the form of 32 points. Maybe the defense is giving them other options and Donovan Mitchell's going off. The other option is that could mean that Evan Mobley's going off. And I don't know if we're going to get like a 30-point game from Evan Mobley at any point.
I don't think so. Not in this series.
But what I think we can get from Evan Mobley is a couple really backbreaking buckets, really timely scores, things that compromise what New York's defense is trying to do. And I just can't help but feel that he's starting to figure things out, and we're going to see steady, better production from them. Like, I do agree. New York's bigs are fantastic defensively. Like Mitchell Robinson, great defender. Isaiah Hartenstein, his ability to defend both at the rim and at the level, I think it is very underrated. It's also really good at goaltending and not getting called for it. But overall, like I just think those guys, when they're on the court, that's going to make things difficult. But if the Knicks do go small, and friend of the podcast, Sam Vecini, theorized, hey, maybe they're going to go Julius Randle at center with Josh Hart at the 4. If 6'4" Josh Hart is playing at the 4 and Julius Randle is their rim protector, if that's the Knicks counter, I do think that opens up an opportunity for Evan Mobley to force the Knicks out of that and back into the Cavs' comfort zone offensively.
First off, I think that would be a big mistake to go small ball. I think that the Knicks don't have enough pick and roll juice to get enough out of that small ball lineup to make it worth it. And that's not a lineup that would convince me to downshift if I'm JB.
No, you keep going with what you're doing. Absolutely.
To Evan's kind of, is he figuring out or is he not? I think he did two things in that game that I liked. Thing one, I think he remembered that he is more athletic than Julius Randle and Isaiah Hartenstein and can literally jump faster than them. Like, I think I get most frustrated with Evan on offense when he's too deliberate, when he takes 2-3 bumps, when he could have just risen the second he caught the ball. And he had a couple flushes in that game where before Randall or Hartenstein especially could load up and get ready to meet him at the rim, he was already in the air. He's such a pogo stick athlete. He's such a quick jumper, and he just kind of glides into the air without needing a ton of doesn't need to put a lot of torque on his knees to go up there. So I thought that was encouraging. And then the play where he attacked Randall from the corner and said, I can use my length and foot speed to get a clean look on you. Those were the two plays where I go, okay, those felt like Evan dictating terms. And then some of them are just like, hey, dude, just shoot your floater normal. They're not going to block it just because they're big. And he's just, especially some of those misses, it's just him putting a little more angle on the shot than he really needs to, or, contorting his body in a way he doesn't quite need to. So I don't think he's going to figure it out all the way. I do not see a 25, 30-point game on the horizon. But can he work his way up to 17 or 18? I think so. But also they're gonna have their answers too. So we'll see.
Yeah, and honestly, an 18-point game in this series is basically the equivalent of a 25-point game. Because
yeah, you're right.
We were talking about 107-90 games, right? Like this is some old school basketball, and I agree with that. I'm curious to see whether or not Evan is able to get it going, because I do still have some concerns about the Cavs' sustainability of their offense. We need to see Garland keep his foot on the gas. That's really important. This is a very good Knicks defense, and I think they can do things to gum it up. I have respect for Tom Thibodeau's ability to put together a game plan, but as I said, we're getting to that point where I don't know how many more big adjustments we're going to see out of these teams. I think it's going to come down to execution, and these teams are going to be throwing a variety of looks on both ends of the court, and it's going to come down to how quick do guys process what's happening out there? Are they able to execute at a consistent level? And I just think it's so interesting. The Cavs are going to Madison Square Garden. This is an awesome platform. That crowd's going to be insane. For the season, the Cavs have the third best net rating on the road. The Knicks have the 12th best home net rating. Now, the Cavs' issues on the road have primarily been closing, including 2 games that they failed to close out at Madison Square Garden throughout the season. Now, that got a whole lot better towards the end of the year, but this is now a big test. The Cavs need to go out, and honestly, I think starting off on the right foot and getting a lead in game 3 and making sure that the Knicks don't find a groove offensively, that's going to be essential. And Carter, I will actually go this far. I think game 3 is a must-win for the Knicks. I think the Knicks are dealing with more nagging injuries. This is a late start for a Friday game, and game 4 is Sunday at 1 p.m. That's a short turnaround. And I think if the Knicks drop this one, that's going to be very hard for them. If Josh Hart's still dealing with some ankle pain, Julius Randle's necked up as well, pardon the pun. I just think if they were to drop game 3, game 4 is going to be very difficult. And I still see this series going the distance. So I think the formula to that is the Knicks winning game 3 and maybe the Cavs go and get game 4. But if the Cavs come out and let's say we get a Donovan Mitchell game, because we know Donovan Mitchell is probably going to have one of those games at Madison Square Garden at some point in this playoffs. Cavs get game 3, I'm going to start. My chest is going to pop out, man. I'm going to be obnoxious Friday night, and I'm going to feel really good about that Sunday afternoon game at Madison Square Garden.
Especially with not much time. That is not a game where you're going to have a lot of time for adjustments or tape or
none.
You're going to get to talk through some stuff.
Recovery. Yeah.
You're going to get to talk through some stuff. You're probably not going to get to practice much. Just before we wrap, I think I love that take, by the way. Before we wrap, I just want to talk about how good the Cavs defense has been in this series. The Knicks are 15th in offensive rating in the playoffs, so second to last, 101.6. Their assist percentage, 15th, 51.5. Their assist to turnover ratio, 1. They've had as many assists as turnovers. That's unbelievable. That's dead last, by the way. Turnover percentage, dead last. They've turned over the ball 18% of their possessions. True shooting percentage, 15th. Effective field goal percentage, 16th. They are getting absolutely smothered in this series, and that's a 2-game sample size. That's including a win. Really, the only thing that is going well for the Knicks right now is free throw rate and offensive rebound rate, where I believe they are top of the playoffs in both. And if the Cavs, again, they don't even have to win the rebounding game. They just have to not get decimated. And, I still feel like the things that made me so confident in Cavs in 5, I feel like a lot of that stuff is bearing out, that the Knicks road
you feel it in your plums.
Well, I'm not still predicting a Cavs in 5 necessarily, though. It's still on the table, guys. I think that ultimately the things that made me think that the Cavs should win this series and should win it comfortably are there. And the ways that I said the Knicks could make this interesting, they're there. But and it's so hard to evaluate because it's only 2 games, and both games were in Cleveland. So I really think we'll know a lot more at the end of Game 3 as to how right I was. But with that said, the Knicks' number 1 indicators for keeping this series competitive are happening, and they have 1 win by 4 points and 1 loss by 25 before garbage time.
Yeah, no, you're completely right, and I'm excited to see what this looks like. And we will be live after Friday's game talking about whatever ends up happening. That could be a lot of fun, man. As I said, I really do feel like that is essential one for the Knicks to get, and for them to get over some of their home woes. That's tough for me to say for some reason.
I would love for this team to shut up the Garden. They're going to be nuts. They're going to be feeling them. They're going to really try to be willing this Cavs team to win. But this is a team with scar tissue too, brother. That's a fan base with scar tissue. And if they're down, just like we were worried about being down 10, 15 points in the first half, if they are down 10, 15 points in the first half, it's going to be a quiet Garden, my friend.
Yep, this is a real opportunity. It would certainly be poetic after a season of discussing the Cavs' performances on the road, and this is a Cavs team that stays in almost every game on the road. They don't get blown out often. Knock on wood, if you're me or listening to us right now. But they're in all of these games, so if they can go in, steal home court, and then try to get greedy for Game 4. That would be massive, massive, massive. The other thing I want to hit on before we wrap this thing up, and I want to stick this at the end of the podcast because I always feel a little weird talking about ourselves. Massive thank you to the Cavs for making the weekend and extended weekend, I guess, happen. And as well as everybody that either came up to us in the concourse or came to the meetup. It's really, really humbling. It's awesome. You just words can't describe how appreciative I am, and it's very, very cool that we continue to do this, and it just makes me want to keep working harder and make this pod as good as possible. So big time thanks to everybody that tunes in live on YouTube, that supports us in every way, shape, and form. It continues to be the most surreal thing.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so cool to get to go to Cleveland, spend time with you, engage with the listeners, and just be in a place that's as obsessed with Cavs basketball as we are. Yeah. I don't think people understand how little of our day-to-day life gets to be about the Cavs because I'm in a college town in Columbus, and you're in the frozen tundra. You're in a Sea Bears town, and as a result, we don't get to just have chats with the randos at the bar about the Cavs or really dive into rotational strategy just every day. So it's such a pleasure to get to go to a pro sports town like Cleveland and hang out and watch the games live and kind of just engage with this fan base and this team in a different way. So thank you very much to the Cavs, and thank you very much to our listeners.
Yeah, big shout out to everyone on the Cavs team that makes it possible. Matt Gold, you are an absolute beauty. It was fun hanging out with you, Brandon. Summers, all the good people with the Cavs. We really do appreciate it. And we appreciate everyone tuning in live on YouTube as well. You guys are the absolute best. Make sure you like and subscribe. Click the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of the Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.